Hey, are you a business owner, entrepreneur, or professional? If so, we want you to apply to be a featured guest on our show. My name is Adam Torres, and I host the Mission Matters series of podcasts. I've recorded over 3,000 episodes, and we are just getting started. How do you know if you'd be a good guest to be on the show? Well, only one way to find out, and that's to apply, but I'm going to let you in on a little secret. We want guests that have a story to tell, guests with a brand, a product, or a service that can benefit my audience of listeners. If this sounds like you, go to missionmatters.com and click on Be Our Guest to apply. I'd love to talk to you and get to know more about your story. Again, head on over to missionmatters.com and click on Be Our Guest to apply. All right, now let's get into the show. Hey, I'd like to welcome you to another episode of Mission Matters. My name is Adam Torres. You can follow me on Instagram at Ask Adam Torres. Keep up with my book releases, book tour schedule, all that other good stuff. And if you'd like to apply to be a guest on the show, just head on over to missionmatters.com and click on Be Our Guest to apply. All right, so I have Michael Halterman on the line, and he's Vice President of Operations over at the Honor Foundation. Michael, welcome to the show.
Adam, thanks for having me. Great to spend some time with you.
Oh man, Michael, I'm happy, and it's an honor to bring you on the show. And I'm happy to get more into the Honor Foundation, your mission behind it, and really what you're doing in helping transitioning veterans. It's a big deal, and we're going to shed some light on what veterans go through as they're transitioning, and also for some of the veterans that may be watching this that are making that transition soon. Maybe this will help educate them on maybe some of the things that they're going to look forward to. But before we get started on that line, I love to start with the Mission Matters question. So, Michael, we at Mission Matters, we amplify stories for entrepreneurs, executives, and experts. So that's our mission. What mission matters to you?
The mission that matters to me most is taking care of special operations veterans in transition and making sure that they thrive.
Man, I love it. And so, the obvious for us to go with this one is your background. So how'd you get started on this journey? Because there's obviously a reason why you care so much about these veterans in transition.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was a small town kid who grew up in a blue collar home in a little tiny town on the central coast of California. And I found myself, in that small town wanting adventure and to do something bigger with my life and maybe even get to serve others. And so I found that right fit and that adventure in the United States Marine Corps in the late 1990s. And, fast forwarding a bit, in 2003, I found myself in Iraq as part of the invasion force. And after about a month or so of sustained combat, I was standing on a rooftop at about 2 a.m. and I was doing some fire watch so everybody else could get some sleep. And over the next hour and a half, I watched my very first special missions raid essentially unfold right in front of me. It was the first time I'd seen black helicopters fly through the middle of the night. It's the first time I'd seen close air fire support being so close to a target. And I thought all the way up until that point, as an infantryman, I completely enjoyed my job. I knew I was a 20-year guy. But as soon as I saw that, I knew there was something else I had to go do. I didn't know who that was or what they were doing necessarily, but I had to go be a part of it. And so my journey then became, after getting back from that deployment after the invasion, was to figure out who that was. What is SOCOM? What are Green Berets? What are Navy SEALs? And how do they fit into all of this? And I had to go be a part of it.
Wow. So what does that transition look like? So you saw it, you saw what was going on, and now you're going back, obviously, after the invasion, and you're thinking about like next steps in the career. Like, what did that look like?
Right. So I quickly found out that there wasn't a direct route in the Marine Corps, but I started training much differently, both mentally and physically, because I knew that I would have to take an assessment and a selection process through somebody at some point, whether that was the Navy or the Air Force or the Army. And that put me in the right place at the right time with the right capabilities in 2007 when Marine Special Operations started. And I was able to check in, get assessed and selected, and join a team almost immediately. And there began my special operations journey of lots of back-to-back Afghanistans, lots of episodic engagements throughout the Pacific and Mediterranean region as well. And just 20 years of adventure.
Wow. So, and this leads in greatly to the Honor Foundation and why you joined and why you do what you do. I mean, obviously you're, through a 20-year plus career here, and then, and all the different experience you had, whether it's, whether it's Afghanistan, whether it's Iraq, and then going all the way up, through Special Forces. I mean, you've done a lot. You had a very long career there, and you did a lot. So now you decide to make that transition. When you were transitioning out, I guess, like, what was some of the first things that you had to think about? Like, what was going through your mind?
Great question. Yeah, transition is perhaps and probably described by most of the gentlemen and ladies that I get to talk to now on this side of the transition, but I was certainly feeling it in my own transition. It is one of the scariest things that you're ever going to do. I mean, you're leaving everything that you know, the language, the culture, the understanding of the uniform, and all of those things, and you're leaping quite literally into the unknown. And without having great Americans who are willing to help transitioning service members, help them transition, it really is difficult. And it can be scarier than a combat deployment.
Yeah, I was just thinking as you're saying this, because I got to back up on this one a little bit, because when we opened this interview up and you're telling me about black helicopters flying over and seeing all these things, like, that scares me. When you talk about like transitioning out of that scenario, like, I feel like for civilians, like that's it doesn't necessarily compute. You know what I mean? Like, it's different.
Sure.
If you're a civilian, you never trained, never been in the military, you're just like, wait a minute, huh?
Yeah. Yeah. So the idea of going from a small knit, high performing team where you can literally trust the person to your left and your right with your life.
Wow.
And then trying to figure out, am I going to be an engineer? Am I going to be in manufacturing? Am I going into tech?
Mm-hmm.
Am I going into healthcare? And what really resonates with me after this life I've known of small knit teams and working overseas and so on. And so you have to learn a whole new language, right? Almost. And you have to learn all of these different things that are in these different industries just to figure out what you want to do next potentially. Mm-hmm. And then how do you build trust with your new teams and your, those new fellow employees that you're with and that new company? It's really it's an arduous journey, to say the least.
Yeah, I always like to think about it like when you think about like if somebody didn't go the military route per se, and maybe they went into college and then they have those periods of years, like maybe after college, that year or two, like, hey, what do I want to do with my life? Or maybe even their last year of college, they may be thinking, maybe I'll try this job. Maybe I'll try this job. So in this case, put in perspective, I mean, you already had an entire decorated career there, 20 plus years, and then you're set back to that stage of what do I want to do with my life? Because in order to get to the level you were at doing what you're doing, I mean, there's no like wondering about other things. Like you're focused. You have to be focused. It's your job. It's a whole nother level. So like that switch can't be easy to just turn off.
Sure. So it really does take a team of coaches, mentors, staff, faculty to really help transitioning military members, especially from special operations, transition well. Because just like you said, you have blinders on and you were so mission focused on, life important, life mattering situations that you're putting yourself in every day. It's really hard to know what's going on beyond that.
Yeah. And I think that's a great transition. Speaking of transition, the Honor Foundation. So maybe just give us a little bit of history. Tell us a little bit more about the organization overall to start.
Yeah. So in 2014, we were founded and we earned our 501c3 credentialing. Since then, we've served a little over 1,000 fellows to date. So we have 1,000 alumni that we will serve for life.
Wow. Congratulations. That's amazing. That's huge.
Thank you. We're a 3-month executive style education process. So right up front, it sounds long, but what we're doing in this process is really life transforming curriculum and information so that individuals can understand what possibly might be next for them so that they can both take care of what they need financially, but more importantly, take care of themselves holistically and be happy in their next job. Be excited to go do what's next.
When you say like life-changing curriculum, I mean, can you give me an example of what like that might look like?
Absolutely. So it's approximately 3 months. Each month is essentially a phase. And it's very much like the military. It's crawl, walk, and run towards the end.
Yeah.
And ironically, the crawl phase at the very beginning is actually the hardest, because what we do during that entire phase is we help the individual really peel back the onion of who they are and all of those layers, so that when they take off the uniform and the rank and the titles, they can understand who they are and why they do what they do and really what inspires them. Because understanding all of that is really important so that they can get a good, bearing on what might possibly be next for them. So that's all phase one stuff. And once they understand themselves a little bit better, then we can roll them into phase two. And then it becomes much easier to talk about building resumes, building LinkedIn, starting to do company research and really understanding a company from the inside out as opposed to the outside in. And having lots of cups of coffee. We encourage everyone to do as much networking as possible. And then in phase three, we really start to expose them to different opportunities, lots of different professionals, and some of the amazing companies that partner with us.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And as you're talking about these different phases, I mean, obviously this is designed specifically for veterans in transition, but I'm thinking to myself, like, these are great phases for any type of executive course or anybody doing that. I'm like, man, I wish I would have went through something like that once upon a time.
We have found that it does overlay really well with anybody in transition, because essentially, if you break it down reductively to its component parts, a transition from an industry is pretty much synonymous across the board. If you're going from tech to healthcare, or healthcare to manufacturing, or military to any one of those, a lot of the unknowns are the same. A lot of the things you need to now learn are the same. And one of our catchphrases is, what got you here won't necessarily get you there, right?
Oh, yeah.
Famous book that's out there. And we find that to be very true.
So a lot of different nonprofits, a lot of different routes that you could have went with your career and otherwise to help people. Like what stuck out about Honor Foundation that kind of either separates it or just in general, like what drew you specifically to the organization?
So I got to experience the organization as I was in transition myself. I knew that in 2016, I had about 2 years left in service. So I was going to transition at 2018 after 20 years of honorable service. And I started looking around at what was possibly going to be next for me. And I tried several different foundations. There's a lot of, as you already mentioned, lots of really good Americans out there doing very important work. And I started gathering lots of tools that I felt more comfortable about the transition process. But then I showed up at the Honor Foundation and realized I had more unknown unknowns than I had even realized. That culminated on the first night with the director of the San Diego campus to ask a very simple question. He said, "Hey, we're all going to introduce ourselves to each other tonight, just like you've always done at a networking event. But here's the catch. I don't want you to introduce yourself with a military rank, and I don't want to hear about what you've done. Wow. I want to hear who you are and why you do what you do and what makes you passionate. Ready, go." And we all kind of sat back and we, rocked back on our heels, and we just were not prepared. And he said, "Don't worry, that's okay. That is what this course is for. This is part of the design. And once we can understand how to really talk about ourselves personally and interpersonally with others, all of this is going to make much more sense." And I knew immediately that I was in the right place, learning the right things, that I would be successful in my transition. And so over the next 3 months, I experienced it. I'm a proud alumni of Group 15 from San Diego. And through that experience, I started using all those skills and techniques. And I started interviewing really well. And I started going towards renewable energy sector. And in doing so, I really found a passion with what I thought I wanted to do next, and really, in that industry. And so I was along that path, and I got a phone call again from the same director of the San Diego campus. And he let me know that there was a job opportunity at the foundation. And I thought, what better way to help others? Because ultimately that's what I really want to do. And so I retracted my candidacy from those other two companies, and I went all in on nonprofit, and specifically at the Honor Foundation.
Wow, absolutely amazing. And I think one of the interesting things about that exercise that you said, okay, so share who you are without your rank, like without like where you've been, what you've done, and talk about like you. And if you think about the difference between that, that's a difficult proposition. I bet you for some of the people in the room, that was like looking at them naked. Like all of a sudden they're naked in front of everyone because they don't know, like when's the last time, especially they're in there like, 20 years like yourself, when's the last time they introduced themselves to somebody else that was military without their rank or these other things like, right. or been able to use that. I don't want to say as a crutch because that's not what it is. It's not that. It's more of as your identity. It's almost like they've taken your clothes, they've taken your identity. Now what?
Right. Yeah. And that's why the course is 3 months long. It's really that first portion, that first month of figuring out your why and who you are and how to articulate, to that, so to the civilian business, public, so they can understand it well, right? What is their return on investment if they take a chance on hiring you? That usually takes that entire 3 months for that transitioning special operations veteran to really hone that down all the way to a well-articulated value statement.
Oh, it's such a big point you're making there. Because if you think military, we're thinking teams, we're thinking the unit, we're thinking, the army, the country. When you're going into corporate America, sure, those, there might be the company, but it's still you. You got to sell you. It's a lot different than what you're normally used to going through day to day, and there's way different rules and things like that. So I love it. I mean, I love the program. I love the way you described it, and I'm excited by the numbers too. Over 1,000 people already. I mean, it's a big deal. So Michael, what do you like? Obviously we know your background. We know like the Honor Foundation is a great fit for you, but what do you like most about working there? Like what gets you up in the morning?
Yeah, that's a great question. So going through the process myself, part of that first foundational month is we go through Simon Sinek's Start With Why. We put all the fellows through that curriculum. And through that process, I found out my why is I solve the problems of tomorrow so others can bridge to the future. I really thought that was taking me into tech, and I really found a fitting in renewable energy. But as soon as I switched my own mindset and realized that I could help anyone, anywhere, and if you allow me to play with tech also, that's a huge plus. So it really found a fast fit with being able to help my brothers and sisters transition well in my first initial role at the Honor Foundation as the director of the virtual program. So I got to help others and play with tech. There was a win-win for me initially. And now I've gotten to move into a new role, which is the vice president of operations, and really helping my team help others is really my new passion. And I work with such hardworking, great Americans that really come every day adapting and bringing their A game. It's phenomenal to be able to support them.
Absolutely amazing. Can you give me you don't have to share a name, but can you give me some examples of some success stories or some people that have come through the program or some feedback? Like give me a little bit there. I need some of those warm and fuzzies because I know you're doing great work over there.
Sure. So I'd like to give you two, if that's all right.
Please.
Because they're kind of at polar opposite ends of the spectrum. We had a young gentleman come through, and he was dead set on being an entrepreneur. He was getting out after about 13 years of service. And everyone was kind of saying to him, are you sure? Because you're 7 years away from, retirement, and there's a lot of benefit to that. Are you really sure that's it? And he was dead set on that, on being an entrepreneur. He had great plans. He had a very well articulated business plan. He understood his market that he was aiming for. He knew the numbers, and his pitch deck was right on point. But through the process, what he really peeled back about himself was he still really enjoyed his time in special operations. And then it made more sense for him to stay in. And so he ultimately ended up dropping out of that cohort, and he ended up staying in and finishing his time out. And we consider that a huge win, because at no point are we telling anybody what you have to do. We're just making sure that you are fully looking at all your options from a holistic point of view. Is it best fit for you? Is it best fit for your family? Is it best fit for you financially? And all of those things. So that's one example. And another example that I think is absolutely phenomenal as well is another gentleman who came through. He did 20 plus years. So he's a little bit longer in the tooth, a little bit more indoctrinated, if you will. And he was really struggling in phase one. And he was struggling to the point where he was frustrated, right? He really couldn't articulate his why. And what he had no idea what he wanted to do next. And so the coach that we pair everyone with, everyone gets a one-to-one pairing with a coach, started to get a little frustrated as well. And he finally asked a hard question like, okay, let's roll it all the way back. What did you enjoy doing? Tell me about a time you were the happiest. And he articulated some version of basically sitting on the couch with his dad watching NASCAR. And then so some bells went off and they started aligning the strengths, because we use Gallup Strengths Finder to kind of help them navigate, what are they really good at and what can they improve upon. Ultimately, fast forward through this gentleman's transition, he ends up being at the Indianapolis 500 as a business manager at the Indianapolis 500, and now works at National Speed and has worked at a couple of other raceways and in the racing venue. And who would have thought that a childhood dream, becoming a Marine special operator, and then going on to continuing that childhood dream of sitting on the couch with your father and now being a part of NASCAR and all of these big things. And those are just two really small stories, and we have so many more.
Man, that's amazing. And what's so hopeful about this? And when I think about like what it takes to go through like special operations and things like that, of course, me being a civilian and not knowing everything, but just understanding like these are like really, dedicated, discipline, like just great people that have put a lot of work, a lot of time, a lot of effort to achieve some very uncommon things. So when I think about like an organization like the Honor Foundation, really allowing these individuals, men and women, to continue on their path of achieving really uncommon things and really now becoming pillars of just, civilian life, companies, corporations, NASCAR over here. I mean, come on, like what a great story. It's like that when you think about typical, let's just say retirement from a career, how it used to be once upon a time. I don't think it's this way anymore, but whatever, you're 65 and you're done. But, if you're healthy, you're going to live many, many more years. So for a lot of individuals after this, I don't want to say this like that special operations is an amazing part, but it means that there can be a lot more life after that, especially because they're so young, depending on also their age and when they went in, things like that. Like there's just so much more life. So now with the Honor Foundation helping with this transition, all these other things, it's almost like, man, like there's some bright futures out there.
Absolutely. And to kind of typify what you just said, our mission statement at the Honor Foundation is to serve others with honor for life. So their next mission is clear and they continue to impact the world. We firmly believe everything you just said. Your life's not over just because you come out of military service. In fact, your service continues. It's just going to continue in a different way. And we know that you have many more years of value to bring, not only to your family and to yourself, but to another team who needs your leadership experience. And that can be in any industry, in any place. Amazing and well said. And I agree. So what's next for Honor Foundation? Like what kind of things do you have planned? What are the, what's going on over there? What can we look forward to? Yeah, absolutely. We're excited that this year in 2021, we're going to be launching a brand new campus in fall. So our very first fall cohort in Fort Bragg area, so that we can serve the Army Special Operations community at a much deeper level. We're really excited to be able to get that campus up and running and off the ground. And so it's going to make a huge difference of us serving everyone under the SOCOM umbrella. Fantastic. And that's big news. And I'm happy to bring that over to my audience. So Michael, if somebody is watching this right now and they want to learn more about the Honor Foundation, whether they're transitioning special operations veteran or veteran, and or whether they're, civilian, but they want to get involved. I mean, like what kind of different ways can people get involved, contribute? I mean, like how do we keep or how do we support your mission overall? Yeah, great question. I appreciate you asking that. If you're a good American out there right now, and this just got you inspired, I would encourage you to go over to honor.org. That's honor.org and check us out. Really dig through our website. We have a ton of information on there. Our marketing department does a tremendous job. And by the way, our marketing department is one person. She does a tremendous job of making sure that it's beautiful. And there's a ton of information on there, lots of different ways to get involved. Ultimately, we're a 501c3 nonprofit, and we're trying to serve up to 2,500 special operators a year individually at the individual level. And so time, talent, treasure. We're always looking for anyone that can give some time as a coach, come in as a speaker. If you're an industry leader, we need your knowledge. And if you just want to speak for 5 minutes, we would love to have you come join us. If you have further talents and you get more inspired by spending time with these amazing Americans who have spent their life in service, we have lots of different ways to do that as coaches, as mentors, or even coming in as faculty. And then if you have the treasure, we would really enjoy that too.
Oh, that's great. Love it. And let's leave that website one more time. I know I can see it on your video right now, but this will be an audio too on all of our podcast platforms. So I know there's some people driving or at the office or like whatever else. What's that website? One more time.
It is honor.org.
Fantastic. Well, Michael, I'd have to say it has really been a pleasure having you on the show today and learning more about your background, the Honor Foundation, and all the amazing things that you're doing to really celebrate, help veterans and special operation veterans in transition, and just continue, like you said, the mission for life and how that plays out. So I think it's a great thing, great work you're doing. And to the audience, as always, thank you for tuning in. Hope you got a lot of value out of this. Hope you had a lot of fun. Hope you learned a lot. If you did, don't forget, hit that subscribe button. We want you to be a return visitor and a return viewer. And Michael, once again, it's been really a pleasure having you on the show. Thank you.
Adam, thank you so much.